We are on the air in your hair.
What was that old foghorn leghorn? It's too good to be true. Let the bells ring and the banners fly.
I don't know that one.
Mm. Didn't you ever watch Foghorn Leghorn on the cartoons? Anyway.
What was, yeah, I sort of remember it, but I'm only, in my 30s.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
Oh,
on,
anyway.
on that on that note, so Rob, I just getting over this week of cold, aka COVID, and so my voice is somewhat restrained. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
rely on much of your expertise today.
Oh, could be a very short video call then. Anyway, yeah. Just looking at world events today, yeah, thinking, holy smokes, can it get possibly worse? And where do you start? Obviously, we've got some pretty horrific hurricanes, like coming through. And I saw one on the Border Hawk News that the U.S. has experienced a lot more people arriving by boat or by sea, I guess would be a proper term. So are these hurricanes that are coming up the East Coast, or is that going to be causing an awful lot of migrant deaths? I don't know. You certainly hear about it in the Mediterranean. Haven't heard too much here, interestingly. Mind you, maybe they don't know yet.
Well, I haven't really thought. I know that the land border is inundated and has been for some time, and is really total what I think is a disregard on purpose of the southern border by the American administration. I think their policy is to not worry about it because they have a different uh, concept of what border management should be. And
Well,
so,
again, if you look at the Border Hawk news page, big headline: El Paso hit by 1,500 illegals a day. And I'm thinking, well, that's a huge stat, but that's the ones that they've caught. How many are they not catching? And the other one that was on there is illegals are taking joyful selfies after crossing the border. You're right. That's just a total disregard for the laws and for any semblance of nation protection. Not that Canada can stand back and say, gee, what was that Roxton Road has already surpassed the number of people coming in from 2017, and we're not even, well, we're almost three-quarters of the way through the year.
well, the numbers, if you put them into a different perspective, is in the US, the total number of uh, undocumented migrants that have entered the US is now the equivalent of the population of Ireland in the last 2 years. Now, this is mass migration. This is not anything less than that. Now, does it with the impact? We're just observers here, but there's clearly no stomach for enforcing the borders of Canada or the US by these two governments. They just seem to think that things will balance themselves out. That all the host communities can absorb countless millions without any negative impact, and to
Yeah.
challenge that thinking is immediately responded to with demon-like responses that you must be everything bad if you question the
the wisdom.
logic of that kind of a social policy. Never mind the economic and law enforcement
Yeah,
implication.
that's right now. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for immigration, but I'm all for state selected immigrants, not self-selected immigrants.
Exactly, exactly. So the common denominator here in Canada and the U.S. is borders are someone else's problem. Yet curiously, they worry a lot about the Russian Ukrainian border, but they don't seem to be too concerned about their own borders.
Well, it sure seems that way, doesn't it? It's unbelievable if they're keeping track of the number of illegals coming in at Roxton Road into Canada. Um, that's not the only point of illegal entry across our, what is it, 5,000 mile, 8,000 kilometer country. How many others are we getting? And you know, again, going back to the border hawk, thousands of these migrants are criminal records, no concern, previously deported. There has to be some kind of a, well, and it's I don't know. There's got to be some penalty, but then what would the penalty be?
Yeah, I'm I'm curious to understand the end game in this policy. Like, what is the end game here? Immigration is not a zero sum game. This is silly. This has to have, much like the ideology that drives the green and the gullible with regard to climate change. Like, okay, that's fine. I'm not against improving planet's health, to
Mhm.
put it in a broad perspective. But the approaches that are being made are becoming very autocratic, and
But
and
yeah, that's true. As you say, the green. I'm certainly not against some green technology. I'm not against carbon taxing if that carbon taxing would be going into fund research and development, helping people who can't afford to switch over to the new technologies, with grants or whatever. But it seems to me that that's just going into general coffers that are going out to willy-nilly government harebrained schemes.
well, it's both this issue and in the migration issue are third rails for these governments. Not one of these leaders has had the intestinal fortitude ever to have a referendum or an election basically fought on the issue of should there be no borders, or
Yeah.
should there be no limits to immigration numbers.
And
No one ever goes out and has to be truthful, to say to the population, what do you think? It's all this elitist nonsense that we know better. And the autocracy of the last decade or so is becoming very evident. And they go, oh, well, no, it's just some right-wing stuff. This is nonsense. We've got people are asking questions, and they don't like you asking questions.
mhm.
And you can see it in how the reaction on social media is on that there's this unholy alliance between certain groups that never existed before.
Mhm.
When you think back a generation ago, it was exactly the left that would challenge people who would stop you from asking questions. Now everything's completely flipped on its head here,
Yeah.
and there seems to be some ideological hell-bent approach by, like I say, the Greens on climate change, and convincing the gullible, of which there are literally millions of people. And I'm going, gracious, I mean, if you're going to put out these literally societal earthquake changes that you're going to have, because it's okay. So for the last 2 years, you have these huge waves of migrants. Okay, in the coming 2 years, 4 years, they're not going back to where they came from. They're now going to have to find their way in the society, jobs, schools, health. I mean,
Mhm.
so how is that absorption going to occur? I mean, there's this thinking, I think, by the part of the ideologues, everything is going to be just hunky dory. We throw enough money at it, and if people who question it, we just shame them a lot, then we're going to get our way. But curiously,
Well,
that's not how it's going to turn out. In
I think
particular,
what
the
you're right.
timing is lousy because the economy is in deep trouble globally, never mind the US. And um, so you have to wonder uh, how this will turn out. And I don't think
Well,
it will turn out
it
well.
goes back many years ago, like we had before, where we had, well, in Canada in particular, we had the make my country your country. Let's have
Oh,
an
yeah, I remember that
right?
one.
Well, why are we having an amnesty? Well, there's just too many people to take care of. We can't arrest them, we can't deport them, we can't do blah blah. So let's just regularize their status, which is fine on one sense. Why put a lot of resources into something that you can't fix? But let's put those resources into something that would be preventative. Because the minute you have one amnesty, you've in essence declared an exemption. And everybody knows that if you have one exemption, it becomes the rule of law. So eventually
Correct.
we'll flood their system again and they'll have another amnesty. So while I may not qualify as a regular immigrant, I can certainly get there and then hope for the best down the road. And maybe, it might be 5 years or 6 years, but I'll get what I want. And, 5 years from then, somebody else will get what they want because there's always going to be an amnesty.
Yeah. Well, let's say no one ever asked the population what they thought, because these are really societal changes. Uh, and the self proclaimed experts, particularly if they're politicians, because politicians come and go. Certainly, the ones that were around making up this stuff that you referred to earlier, some of them are long gone or dead,
Mhm.
and the wreckage they left behind is what we're dealing with today. And some of these things are unfixable.
That's right.
You look at the impact of the importation of certain, cultural mores that have become uh, antisocial in a Western liberal society, and now the people close their eyes to petty crime. Well, that's just because it is the way it is. No, it never was that way. I mean, the rise in crime, the rise in antisocial behavior, to some extent, not all of it, is has its roots in an era of a decade or two ago when they had to essentially embrace people who came from lawless cultures, and hope that they could convince them that when they're in a Western society, the rule of law and
Yeah.
the rights of individuals and all that, the rights of women. I mean, you could go all down. This was all like through osmosis. These new arrivals will figure it out, and they'll play by the Western rules. And boy, what a surprise! It didn't quite turn out that way. There's a lot of changes that have occurred in our society that and it's almost verboten to talk about it because people get.
Well, yeah, vote for voting to talk about it, but uh, like a lot of things, if you want to put this out to the so-called unwashed masses to be able to decide whether this is a good policy or not, inevitably you're not getting all the information out. You will get what the ruling powers want to be out, and the rest of it's going to be shut down. Right? What's
Well,
the total cost going to be? What will the impact be? Yeah, and you hit a couple of really big points there. schools. I don't know how it is where you are, but here we've got kids stacked in portables because they can't build enough schools all across this country. And I'm pretty sure most other countries, we're having a problem with our healthcare systems. You know, we can't get the doctors in, we can't get the nurses in, we can't get the practitioners in. One, because of the training regime, maybe, but the second is there just doesn't seem to be the desire to go into that profession anymore. I don't know. Maybe it's COVID related. Maybe it was going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's perhaps a aftermath of COVID. Plus, now we go into a period of economic uncertainty, uh, and we have a declining private sector working for
Mhm.
us and a growing public sector working for us, certainly in this country. And the question is, how do you sustain that? How do you
We
sustain?
don't. Yeah, we're not making anything.
Well, it's not just not making anything. There's this illusion that the public sector pays taxes. That's this is nonsense. You know, the only taxes that are generated are by a sector that makes something. The government workers don't pay taxes because they are the people being paid through taxes. It's a
Yeah.
circular argument here. You know,
Yeah,
it's
well, we do pay taxes and we're actually paying part of our own salary. But eventually, if you have 100% of the people working on the public service, that's not going to be paying 100% of their wages. So where's the money coming from?
of course not. This is the point that they keep saying that governments can't go broke. I got news for those people who say that governments can go broke.
Well, I think all you have to do is kind of look at Ireland, New Zealand. You know, there are two that come to mind.
Yeah,
Uh,
when you addle down that road, even if you're working for the state or the province or the federal governments or whatever, eventually they can't pay you because there's no
mhm.
money. You cannot tax people to ad infinitum. There simply isn't enough energy, in the body politic of those people who are the truck drivers to the manufacturers of steel to the people who work in agriculture. You can't tax them to the point where they just, you cannot sustain three-quarters of the population who are on the public payroll by one quarter of the population. It actually generates the wealth.
Mhm.
This is just so patently absurd. And we're going down that road in an enormous speed, and at least here in North America. I mean, you go, how did we get on this track? Whose bright idea was this?
Mhm.
And then and actually you can start to, uh, parse it out. Well, it's think tanks and universities. Well, where do you think they get their money from? And by the way, something I read today that the public sector now makes more money than the private sector uh, by a good percentage in Canada. More, so you can't do that. You can't have a poor private sector taxed to the eyebrows to pay for a well-paid, overstaffed public sector. I mean, yes, we had COVID and people had to make adjustments, but that's in the rearview mirror now.
Mhm.
And these people don't want to go back to work. It's too dangerous. And I'm thinking, oh my, what have we done here? What have we created? And I know this is a kind of where we kind of weaved our way past the original discussion about the migration thing, but these are all bits and pieces that people sit around and go, I don't understand. Nothing makes sense here.
Well, you could bring it back on tack. Like, I mean, if you got the public sector that doesn't want to return to their offices, I don't know very many border patrol agents that are going to be able to do any arrests from their home over the computer with the internet. I mean, it's
I know. Maybe we're just unable to comprehend these changes, Bob. Maybe we don't see the big picture. You
it
know,
could. What's the old saying? You can't teach an old dog's new trick. Well, maybe this is the new trick, and we're just old dogs. I don't
well,
know.
could be, but I mean, there's so many things that you're not apparently permitted to ask questions about, and
Mm.
that's, I think, part of the reason that you get frustrated, and you get frustrated with the leadership at the most senior levels who like to lie to you. I mean, all politicians lie. I think we talked about this yesterday. They all lie. Just some
Yeah.
of them are better at it than others.
And some are just so blatant that they believe it's the truth. You
Oh,
know.
sure, sure,
And the other side of that is, if you say it loud enough and long enough, people will think it's the truth.
of course. Which brings me back to the business of the borders being okay. I mean, they're telling you that there's no problem in the US at the southern border. They're telling you there's no illegal immigration into Canada from here. They're telling people in Europe that, this mass migration is good for you. And don't you dare question that. You know, uh,
Well, it goes back to
we have some sacred
the old
cows you're
adage,
not allowed to
follow
question.
the money. Let's find out who's making profit on this illegal movement of people and goods and the like. You know,
Well, I wouldn't even call it illegal at this point. I would say it's a totally managed open border mass migration policy. So, I cannot blame the hundreds of thousands of folks who take advantage of this, because this is
this is
even in their own mind, they're not doing anything wrong. You know,
Mhm.
you're welcome to go there, so I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not going to hang around in a dictatorial dump, or whatever country you want to pick that has a dictatorial regime or extreme poverty. You're gonna leave that.
Mhm.
You're gonna go to whatever part of the world offers you um, better opportunity you got someplace else. My question is like yours. Okay, who benefits from this wide open? Who's the net beneficiary? And that really needs to be discussed. And
Well,
clearly, the global thinking is we shouldn't have borders at all. And it's very evident from the discussions at the UN, for example, the World Economic Forum, that what we're talking about is absolutely reprehensible. You cannot have borders are unnecessary, uh, uh, because that would be anti-human. And you're thinking, oh, okay.
well, and again, I can understand from a high level, big picture, esoteric point of view. Yeah, we can see that here. You go into any convenience store, you don't see too many. What's the proper term? Second, third generation people working there. It's the people that have come into the country that are working there. Um, they're doing the jobs that perhaps we don't want. So therefore, there is some good. I can understand that you would want to have open borders to get the people in to do the work that is not going to get done unless you have these people.
So isn't that exploitation?
I would call it that. I don't know what other
So
people would
who's
call it that.
benefiting from that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, then to suggest that there's some sort of hidden agenda based on culture or race or whatever is nonsense, because evidently it's okay to have
Yeah.
folks do these jobs because they're doing the jobs. But you can't just, I think, talk about it in isolation. You have to look at the big
No,
picture here. And
but
then,
the other side of that is that you get John Smith coming in from whatever country, who in his country was, I don't know, a highly paid, well regarded position like a doctor or an engineer or you name it. But then they come here and they don't or can't get into that profession here. Um, it's interesting. Yeah, maybe there's no borders, but maybe there's exploitation. Okay, well, if you want to do that, then why can't John Smith come in here and be a doctor? Why can't John Smith come in here and be the engineer? Yeah, you can't have, as my favorite columnist Rex Murphy would say, you can't have a suck and blow situation. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't have these people who are highly qualified coming here, um, rotting away, doing something that they don't really want to do, but they're forced into.
Hello, please leave a message.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I should have undone the
That's okay.
phone. The part that also no one wants to talk about here is if you look at the homeless situation, they're not migrants.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well, yeah, they're intercountry migrants, maybe, but
yeah, but they're not the ones that just crossed the border.
no, no.
Which is to me a phenomenal question, because if we're talking about millions, particularly in the US, yet you see a lot of homeless people. They didn't just didn't cross the Rio Grande.
Mhm.
They're long-term residents in LA and San Francisco or New York or Toronto or what have you. So
Yeah. Well, we've noticed that. We had a trip down into San Diego a while back, and it was just unbelievable with numbers of homeless. And this was in the downtown core, 4 city blocks, just people camped on the streets and driving down there, people that were camped under the overpasses. Yeah, I can understand being out on the West Coast where it's maybe not as harsh element wise. It people might tend to migrate there, but um, that's just another issue that if you allow all these people to come in willy-nilly because of an open border concept, how many of those are going to end up doing the same thing? Because right now there doesn't seem to be the people wanting to do the work that's out there. I don't, yeah. The chicken and egg, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, well, it's deeply philosophical. It's
Mm-hmm.
also I think to some extent an existential threat to a way of life in North America, which is rapidly changing into something quite unidentifiable in historical terms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this is one that we'll have to revisit, I think, with some specifics to try and answer the question. And I said, what is the end game here? Maybe we're not seeing it in the proper context.
Well, and again, as you said, that's a good point. Maybe some of the viewers know of contact and some agencies that could enlighten us. Send us information. Let us know. We can reach out to them and find out if we can get them on and uh, present their side of the story, or what is the big picture.
Yeah, it's sell it a little better, because at the moment I don't think it's a big sales item. Um, it just seems that it has uh, it's an orphan when it comes to a lot of supporters, which is why I find kind of peculiar. Yet it carries on. Um, there's no the the criteria for success just isn't set. It's just a
Well, I guess that goes back to being the high jump or the pole vault, right? I mean, it used to be quite a feat to get your body or your whole being up into the air and over a bar unfortunately, with society the way it's gone, not everybody could do that. So we've had to lower expectations, you know. So instead of going over a 5 foot bar, now we're going over a 2.5 foot bar.
Yeah.
So,
And, we didn't even talk about the situation sort of globally, the referendum that the so-called referendum in eastern Ukraine the Russians had, which from the Western perspective is a sham, from a Russian perspective is absolutely key to their success.
mhm.
Yet no one ever. What I really find peculiar, again, one of those things we don't want to talk about in the West is, how come there's 8 or 9 million Russians that would like to be with Russia and not with Ukraine?
Mhm.
I don't understand why that seems to be something they don't want to talk about. I mean, you telling me
Well,
that?
it's, I think, maybe taking away a bit of concern from what might be going on between Republic of China and Taiwan, right? I mean, uh, is there issues going on there? It's been no aces up the sleeve. China doesn't think that Taiwan should be anything more than just another province of China. The West doesn't view it that way. So, we're spending an awful lot of our time and concern, rightly, wrongly, with what's going on in the Ukraine, but there's a huge other body of water and countries out there where, you know, there's other issues to look at as well.
Well, again, with Ukraine, with all due respect to all the pain and suffering going on there, the question I've raised is what is the impact of a squabble between Russia and Ukraine on the rest of the world, which has been squabbling there for hundreds of years. What is the gain for us in North America? I don't get it.
Well, I don't either, but all I know is that they're anticipating that by the end of the week here, I'm going to be paying $2.40 a liter for gasoline. So
Yeah.
it must have some impact.
Which means someone is doing something to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is very superficial, but
No.
weird stuff is going on. I mean, to this morning we wake up to the fact somebody has blown up pipelines under the Baltic Sea, and one half will tell you the Russians are blowing up their own pipelines, which doesn't make any sense to me because they can turn off the juice
The
anyway,
tap.
which will
Yeah.
blow it up.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, well, maybe it was done by
A disinterested third party.
disinterested third party who might be selling liquid uh, natural gas when none comes from Russia. I mean, we are living in very strange times.
Very weird, very interesting.
But that one I think is going to evolve into everyone will be sorry for I think for the Ukrainian debacle.
Mm.
And some folks need to go on their computers and go to the website, the Wayback Machine, and
Mhm.
take a look at what was happening that neck of the woods 10 years ago. Anyway, we're going to run out of time here because
Yeah.
we have a
Well,
30-minute limit.
we've touched on a lot of points again, maybe a little scattered, but yeah, once again, out to the viewers, if you like it, great. If you don't, great. Let us know one way or the other. If you have people that you think could add to our discussions, get in touch with us. We certainly are not going to shy away from having people come and join the conversation. So
Yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button or the subscribe button, hit the bell. If you're on Rumble, you can of course watch it, and you can hear it on Spotify
yeah,
anytime from anywhere. All right, Bob.
well,
We'll see you next week.
you bet.
Hopefully,
Take care.
I'll work on it.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.